My name is Mary Ferris. I'm part of the steering committee and I'll be just explaining a little bit about what's going to happen tonight. It's pretty informal. Things can change, but things will happen. So obviously, thank you for being here, both on in the room. And I need to warn you, we're using the owl. If you tell us, you're going to be up here. So while the meeting's going on, you just want to watch out for that. I want to say that we are very grateful to have this amazing building and ever building to have access to the community resource. Things are kind of new for us, so we're fingers crossed it's all going to go well.
Having a little trouble picking up your voice.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is that better? Does that work better? A little closer?
Can you hear her in the chat?
How's it going out there?
Okay, Walker said that's better.
Okay.
Look at the owl.
Yeah, look at the owl.
Yeah.
It finds me wherever you go. So the purpose of this information session is to share what we've learned about the feasibility of creating a new flood resilient neighborhood in the village. There'll be time for comments, questions, and answers at the end. So if you're like me and you're worried you might get something, there's a stack of white cards in the back and there's some pens back there. So you could jot them down. If you're shy, you can take your question when we get to the question and answer period, put it on the table. Otherwise, it'll be sort of normal. Where people just, raise their hand and talk. And then we ask the people on Zoom to, they can either put questions in the chat feature, but if you want to speak, then make sure to use your hand signal so that we can find you. And we hope everything will go well. So, back in August, Arian over here, provided the spark for this, pretty innovative idea. And soon we ended up with a steering committee of 16 volunteers. And so we've been working on this since that time period. We're aware that the town is under a lot of stress right now. And firstly, the flood recovery, of course, which is about roads and bridges, but it's about so much more. And we see our project as part of that effort. Then there's sort of the never normal town business that has to take place. The co-op moving, the worry about the community center, the nervousness over Goddard, and the looming Route 2 changes. Any of these are important and all affect our town's future. There's also many deadlines to be met, and we hope that we can take advantage of a lot of opportunities. So we also encourage you to please help out with any of these things as you can. The town needs lots of volunteer help at this point. I keep coming back to some facts about Plainfield. When we moved here in 1980, the population was 1,249. In 2020, it was 1,236.
Good work.
From
Readers.
yeah, from 2010 to 22, our school lost 100 students. So I just want those numbers to sink in. We're not alone in this in Vermont by any means, but it's not a robust picture for a town. Also, new homes have been mostly carved out on 5 or 10 acre lots or more from farm and forest land out in the hills. That's where, since we've been here, that's where all the development is taking place. There's maybe been like a mobile home moved out of the village and a small house is being built, that kind of thing, but there's not been any new development. Martin Meadow already existed, Sugarwoods already existed by 1980. And those are our subdivisions that we have. So that's kind of a layout of what's been going on. I hope everyone's familiar with the lower village, the upper village, the two parts of it. part of what we want to do is set a context for why we were willing to put so much effort into working on this project. And each of us, as you hear from different people, will just take a minute and speak to that. But, I feel like this question has been asked of me, which essentially is, why should a 75-year-old rural hillside resident of 45 years care about rebuilding the village? I think that's a pretty powerful question. And first answer is, it's part of my town. Been here a long time. I care. The second answer, which is really the most important, is that I worked at the Emergency Operations Center immediately after the flood, and I was there for about 3 weeks straight. And I saw the dedication of hundreds of volunteers to help. I saw the interest and the support from various agencies around the state, and witnessed the trauma that was experienced by our residents. It was not until then that I truly understood what a community the village was. Prior to that, it was someplace to drive through, someplace to get a meal if you would like. Remember back when we had our art gallery, those kinds of things were there. But I didn't really think so much, other than for a few friends, about what it really meant to the people living there. And I learned a lot during those weeks. And the third point is our eroding tax base. So still, all good intentions aside, we have to make the numbers work, which is what we're trying to do. And that's what you're going to be hearing about tonight. So hold your questions, please, and we'll get started. Billingsley is gonna talk a little bit, and then after that, we'll just keep moving off to different people. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't think about what I was gonna say very far in advance. But what Mary asked me to do is not to speak as emergency management director, which has put me, as it put Mary into the thick of all of the unfolding trauma and loss and gain that came with having a flood of the dimensions that we did. But rather, I live in the village. I live within easy sight, right out my front door of the Great Brook. I have lots of neighbors that I care about, people pretty much I've got to know, either on a first name basis or even better, people like Julie Wilk, who used to come and help me with my goats. I mean, everybody that is in my immediate neighborhood, I run into a lot because there's a lot of foot traffic in front of my house along Hudson, and Mill is a wonderful place to walk a dog or just go out for a refreshing bit of air. And one of the things that hit me after the first nastiness of the whole thing happened, which is if you don't and haven't lived near the brook or haven't heard about it, it announces when it's going to flood, because the volume of the water starts picking up enormous stones and dropping them down. Stones that are maybe 2 tons. It picks them up and drops them maybe 50 feet downstream. So there's great big thumps. It sounds like somebody is kicking my front door. And that makes everybody's hair stand on end. But now people are telling me that if they hear heavy rain drumming on the roof, it freaks them out. That if they hear or see that there's going to be a storm coming, it bothers them and they start to get panicky. I'm so grateful that the neighbors that could stay have stayed, but many of them think they might have to leave because the brook is still likely to misbehave. And part of what impresses me is the silence. There aren't as many people walking by. There aren't as many people living nearby. I'm looking out, it's more like a moonscape, and it's very spooky and strange and unsettling. And I feel, and I know I'm not the only one, that it feels like the heart has been torn out of part of the village. And the other part of it is that because it gets into the news that we've been damaged, there are new people sort of cruising the neighborhood. There are cars that go by and people stop, and they're not stopping to help. They're stopping to see if nobody's home, to see if they can steal something. I've had many people report to me that there are strangers who stop in and even walk up to the door and look around to see if there's anything loose. As if because we've been traumatized, because we've been torn apart, we're not of value anymore. So regaining that value and regaining our sense of ourselves and re-stitching back together what I felt was a living, breathing, co-supportive community is one of the things I want to desperately help happen. I really need the neighborhood. I grew up in the village of Northfield, which isn't very far from here. And I remember everything from trick or treating and singing in the choir right on up to what it meant to walk down the street and just constantly run into people you knew. And I think that that's a really important part of being a village person. And those of us who do live in the village, it's a source of invisible reinforcement to have all that fabric of a community around us. So I'm 100% behind this project because it feels like a way to keep that fabric going.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name's Eli. I'm gonna try standing over here so the owl can see me. See how that goes. Yeah, right. Yeah, so I'm gonna talk through some of the points, some of the impacts of the flooding so far. Other folks prepared this awesome slideshow, and I'm just gonna speak for a little bit so that other people don't have to speak the whole night. So yeah, I've been a part of this project since the beginning, mostly as on the sidelines, but I've been really grateful to be a part of this group. Just to go over the project goals. Yeah. We're trying, these are our goals. We're trying to rehab those affected by the flood. We're trying to I'm a little nervous. But I just wanted to so these are our goals. You can read them for yourselves. I think I don't think it's worth me reading them all out loud. We've been working really hard as a group to find out if this is possible, and then this is our attempt at communicating what that process has been like to you all, to the community. So yeah, I think, but I think that all of these stated goals, there's also a deeper goal of that's based on community. Yeah. So we're looking at what we've lost, right? We've lost all these buildings, all of this space where people lived, right? And not just single family homes, but rented spaces too. So these are some of the numbers associated with that, right? So 39 dwelling units, 60 people in those units, 11% of the grand list, right? So that's going to have an impact on taxes in the town. I don't know what other things like the Goddard sale might offset those impacts, right? I don't know. There's so much that's unknown, and we've been working hard to try and find some of those answers. Don't know what the impact is going to be on the local school, right? I don't know that. So yeah, here are some of the, I'm sure you all have been here or seen these things, or experienced them in previous years, whether you're in Barre or Plainfield or Montpelier. Yeah. Still sad. But it's been great to be a part of this group, working to understand these impacts. Yeah, so these are the houses that have applied for buyouts, have applied for the FEMA buyout, the locations. And The next slide shows, sorry,
Areas of the buildings that are still in use.
Okay. Are they applied for fire?
No.
Okay.
so those buildings were nearby, but and are worth being noted on the map, but have not applied for that. This is what it would look like if those buyouts were accepted by FEMA. If those buyouts are accepted by FEMA and the owner decides to go through with that buyout process, right? Sometimes that buyout offer is not navigable by the owner, right? Then the building on that spot would be demolished and nothing could ever be built there again. So this is, someone manufactured this image, right? And
Michael Billingsley.
Michael Billingsley did, yeah. It's really impactful to see what that could look like, right? This isn't exactly what it would look like, right? You would have, maybe we could put in a park there, right? Maybe there could be infrastructure there that's flood resilient, but there couldn't be buildings in the way there are now. Yeah. Yes,
So that's-
yeah, sorry, yeah. No orientation, yeah, so. Mill Street is kind of running on the left there and Creamery right there. You can see it's labeled up there. Yeah. Okay, all right,
You got this.
thanks. Yeah, you all are doing great too.
Could you leave it
So and I think my own statement that I'd like to make standing in front of you all is just that finding housing was hard, really hard before the flood, right? Finding housing after I found housing after the flood, right? The library board let me into the apartment in town. But I think working on this project has been trying to figure out if we can make housing more housing and making housing more accessible for everybody, just in general. Yeah. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Hi, my name is Rick Burrows, and I'm a relative newcomer to town. We've lived here, my wife and I, for almost 10 years now. So I feel like I'm kind of a newbie. When we first moved in, the town was recovering from flood, and I live up on East Hill, so we'd see all the construction going on down on the Brook Road. And I remember thinking, well, that's really bad, but probably won't happen again. In the last couple of years, that really hasn't been the case. And after the last flood, when the meeting was held here, and there was discussion about losing 36 houses in the village because of the flood constraints of the floodway there, I really thought, wow, this is tearing apart the fabric of the village. The village really sits not only as an entity unto itself, but it's where all the roads converge from town too. So it's what everybody who lives out in the hinterland like I do see as the center and where we go to. And its erosion was really tough for me. And I thought, we've got to do something about resiliency. And I started talking with actually Mary about that, saying, this isn't great. We've got to make some changes to make the village more resilient and be proactive about it. And I was sort of stunned to realize there's already a group forming to do just that. And I was really excited to hear that. And next slide. And I was also, I'm an architect. I was an architect for 35 years, and I did a lot of work with rural towns, working with different communities around Vermont and some in New Hampshire as well. And I just couldn't, with my eye, drive by this site at the corner of Main Street and East Hill, because I come right down from the upper right diagonally and down Main Street, look at that field and say, wow, that's the one spot where anything could ever happen. And that was before there was really much of a need for anything to happen there. When I got involved with the committee, I was really stunned to realize that not only was that possibility there, but the owners of it were open to having our group look at that site. I can't tell you how rare that is to have a need and a site, you know, an opportunity converge into one spot like it has here. Is everybody oriented as to where this is and know the site that we're talking about here?
Can you mention what the red and white dotted line is?
The red and white dotted line, yeah, that's the town line. Now, you know, I often drive around that corner and think, okay, well, we're talking about Plainfield, all out there as well, but we're really right at the edge of the town there. So our committee quickly formed into a process where we organized, which is tough to do. Look at the date there. And we've been moving very quickly. Information that was made in 1 month was out of date the next month as we moved very fast through what we were trying to do. We did public surveys, studied the prior work on the site, and got involved with all the state nonprofits that could potentially help us. And we've done site assessments and some preliminary infrastructure and costing to try and figure out if the project financing was even feasible. Here's our group, all volunteers. We're really just a group of folks trying to make something happen that's positive and moving forward in a direction that would improve the community. And so this is us here. Okay. I'm not, like Eli, I'm not gonna read through all of the public survey results, but thank you for answering it. Because we really needed some guidance for that.
I think the people on Zoom can't see this, right? So you might want to read it out loud so they can hear it.
They can see it.
Okay, sorry.
They figured it out. Thank you for bringing that up, though.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I'm almost amazed that technology works this well and that owl scares me. But anyway, here are some of the positive things that people want to see in their community, our community. And if you skip ahead one more, here are the things we want to try and avoid, that we're anxious about and we need to do something about. And I really think that the planning discussion has gone on even as recently as this week, addresses a lot of these concerns or can address a lot of these concerns for every project that happens in the village. We studied some previous development that was attempted on this site. Some of it was given up for reasons of economics. Others were just ecological studies that help us understand what's going on with the site from an ecological standpoint. And we're even getting the attention of the student designers at UPenn who made some efforts to take a look at this. So that's really exciting and fun stuff that's been happening. This is some of the work and outreach that we've been doing with different groups that are around. And we've got some really good help from a lot of these folks. Some of these are willing to help build, help actually make a difference with this. Others are providing streamlining from cost standpoints for us. And Arian will go into that more later. So one question with the site is it even viable from a technical standpoint? That's always a real challenge. Our lead architect, Sandy Vitzium, has been helping organize a lot of this, where we've looked at the soil conditions, and that's really a big unknown. What is it? What's under the earth is something that we always are terrified when you do a development like this, and we have to think about that, wonder about it, investigate it, and also plan for the unknown. And I think we've made some attempts to do that as well. Okay. Here are some of this is the current zoning map. I know it's going through some changes, and so we're just using what we have currently for information. But I just thought it was one, it's kind of an interesting diagram in that it really shows how all these roads converge on the village, and it really expresses its importance. The yellow is the limitation of the village, and it's really pretty well thought out. And it's been that way for quite a while, since before my time. The green is the site that we're looking at, so it's always been within the village. It's really the viable site within the village, and just wanted to show that because I thought it was pretty helpful. I'm gonna ask if maybe Sandy could come up.
You back that slide up really quick. Can you say what the lighter green, like you said green and there are two different greens on there?
Oh, yeah, thank you. There is a yellow, a darker, sort of, grassy green. That's our site. Then other zones within the district are either green or blue there. So the village is the yellow site, but the duller greens and blues are other districts of the town that are zoned differently. And those are areas that I think we're trying to protect from overdevelopment, whereas we're trying to focus development in all of our goals on that lighter yellow area. And our dark green is at the center of that. So I want to introduce Sandy Vitzium, who's the architect who's been helping out with us. I guess I don't need to say any more, Sandy.
I know some of you in the crowd. I grew up in Montpelier. Don't hold that against me. I'm actually the third of 5 generations living in Montpelier. And our family has always tried to serve the community in every way we could. And my way is to try to help communities stay strong. Thinking of my grandson that I would like to continue living in Vermont when he gets older. Why am I helping Plainfield? Because you folks are willing to get things done. It is amazing, time after time. I've been connected with Plainfield for many years. I'm a devoted member of Curse the Golden Turnip. And my son performed many plays here in the Opera House. And I've worked on several buildings, but the thing that comes back to me is that Plainfield is full of people who can do a lot of really useful skills in this community. For instance, Carl Rivetto came over and just dug those test pits for us. Rather than writing a grant and waiting for a year to get 6 test pits done, he just went up and did it. And Plainfield seems to be a group that is willing to just help their community without passively waiting for other people to figure it out. And this really could become a model for other towns in our state. In Montpelier, they are completely held up by their own whatever obstacles, and they're eagerly watching this. This really could become an example. So thank you for letting me help out you folks in any way I can. So we wrote an RFP and we actually got a grant because of the Community Foundation. It was so impressed with how Plainfield was quickly reacting to the situation. They just gave us money for the engineers. And so we have a team working on it right now. And we're trying to figure out all of the infrastructure costs because this will be a subdivision project. We are interested in letting people build to own and also to have some affordable housing using different groups in the state. But the idea would be that there's this kind of people doing more for themselves than, again, passively becoming whatever the state works out for them. So if we could do the next slide. What we have gotten so far, this is the beginning of the base map for the community design group. The subdivision will be designed by the community on February 8th. We're trying to get as many unknowns finalized before February 8th as possible, along with the cost for it. So the two major things we know is that we need 2 roads in and out. We don't want 1 road in case it washes out or whatever else happens. It's just good to have 2 roads. And we probably do need to cut over to East Hill Road for emergency vehicles because any road coming up off of Main Street is going to be pretty steep. So we hope to have those finalized and fine for February 8th. And we're also narrowing down where is the area that people could play with putting houses and various combinations, different sizes, etc. Really that's it. We'll be trying to get people very organized to design between 10 o'clock and 3 o'clock in 5 hours. Come up with 3 good designs that then the community can work through further to finalize. I don't know if that's my last slide or
That's here, right?
right here, Saturday, February 7th, already 8. Already 50 people have signed up. And the more the merrier.
How would you sign up?
How do you sign up? I think there's a slide at the very end so you can write that down.
There's also some little small flyers in the back that have a website address where you can RSVP. There's pages and then also little quarter pages.
If I could just say 2 words about it.
And can you speak up a little?
Oh, I'm
I'm
sorry.
having trouble hearing
Kirsty.
you on that.
No, that's okay.
Thank you. I'll use my projecting voice.
Thank you.
So to give just a couple words about how this will work. We're going to have tables of between 6 and 8 citizens with a facilitator. We've asked AIA Vermont to help. I think Rick, wherever Rick went, Rick, you're gonna be a facilitator too. I'll be a facilitator. Anybody who has facilitating experience, please let us know. But the idea is to let each group kind of sort through their questions. First we'll be developing what their mix of housing types will be and come up with a little program. And then we'll do a session about actually designing and go back and forth between small groups and the whole group. And really grassroots effort.
Can I just ask, what are the divisions on that?
Oh, good question. So the solid lines, well, the white things around, of course, are the roads. And I should have marked Creamery Street. The solid lines are property lines. And the dashed lines are contour lines. So in the bottom right white area is the little hill. Most people are probably familiar with the hill as they go around Main Street to East Hill. Yep, where the arrow is now. And the ground slopes off in a gently rolling way towards East Hill. And there's also a plateau where I wrote buildable area for the new neighborhood. And because the contours are the dash lines are closer together as they go towards Main Street, you can see that kind of steep slope down to Main Street. There's a very steep slope on the left side of the buildable area. That is almost a cliff, really steep slope down to the old railroad tracks. And you can see a faint diagonal line, maybe Kirsty, you can the diagonal line that cuts from 9 o'clock up to 12 o'clock on the left side of the property. See that line that goes all the way through? That's the old railroad bed, that one, yeah. Which is very hard to walk now, but it's definitely an old railroad bed. To the bottom left, that amphitheater kind of curved shape, and it's very steep hill, is going down towards Great Brook.
Where is the wetland on that map?
The wetlands are still being finalized. They're generally speaking over on the right-hand area and on the bottom area. Yeah, and then on the bottom of the drawing, yeah, yeah. Yes,
The map that I got from the town delineated the wetland and delineated where you wanted the road. Is that not an accurate map?
the town, was it on our group's website?
Printed out from the town hall.
Okay. I'm not sure what that, if you wanna share it with me. So the engineers and I have been having to do preliminary drawings. We don't want to influence the design process. They're not designs, they're just preliminary.
This one says Natural Resources Atlas.
Yes, so the state of Vermont has something called the Planning Atlas. It's a website, and you can look up the properties, any property in Vermont, and you can see what the different agencies have marked for different things. You can find zoning, you can find your own house, you can find steep slopes, you can find water hazards, wildlife, et cetera.
Right, but I mean, is that an accurate map that,
I'll just look at it and I can tell you.
for the proposed road and wetland?
Okay, this was done way back in October. And this is from a very rough draft from the NDA application.
Okay, so
So-
does that mean it's incorrect or it's,
Yeah, it means it was a rough draft.
okay, but the wetland hasn't changed, correct?
Probably not officially.
It looks like the road is in there,
So,
right?
Can we hold questions until
Yeah.
the end?
yeah, yeah, but to be clear, because we've been working as quickly as possible, because we're trying to get construction started next year, really would like to do that. We're working on these many fronts, and that's a draft of the NDA application.
Okay,
And
is
the
this the
state
appropriate
has,
time to discuss this or? should I
No.
wait till later?
because they're gonna have a lot of member questions, but they're, yeah.
So folks are having a hard time hearing when people ask questions, so just a reminder for later.
Speak up.
Yeah.
Question back here.
What, can it wait till the end?
Oh, can I say one thing, Arian?
Yeah.
So regarding the wetlands, the state bent over backwards to come out and start their part of the delineation on the last day of field work. It was amazing that they started, but we can't finish until after the snow's off the ground, if that makes sense. Okay. I think we're on to
Yeah.
finances now.
Okay, my name's Arian, know a bunch of you folks in the room. I got interested in this. I'm the owner of what's left of the Heartbreak. I didn't live there and suffer the loss that all of the folks who live there did, and that's a much worse tragedy, but I am, but it wouldn't be fair to say it didn't affect me. So, you know, I've been coming and living in Plainfield on and off since 2000. And this is a pretty sweet little town. And I was really moved by the floods as well, and seeing the volunteer efforts. And like many others have said, it does, seeing other people care really makes you care and really shows you that we have something here. And for me, it was, everybody does what they can do to help. And I said, boy, I think there's a good possibility with this land? I know, that's here, and could there be something to do? And there was a lot of other people that were interested, and it just started to get traction. And so, like many things that start very small, it just kept going. And we have a tremendous group, and we've done a lot of work, and it's all been volunteer based. And, you know, I think some people, I've heard the question, well, what's in it for you? And it's like, well, having a town is in it for me. And that's something I value. And I think that other people value that. I think we wouldn't be here, many of you in this room, if you didn't value that. So, so that's been one of the big motivators for me. So I'm going to walk through the project financials and just sort of show you that I think we have a pretty good plan here that shows that even when you try to punch it down a lot. What's that?
Maybe take.
Oh, great. If I stand back, I don't know, but I think the owl maybe has an interesting perspective. Mary said it always has a very way of looking at you from underneath in an unflattering way. So the way that we've tried to tackle this to sort of say, does this thing really have legs? Is to say, working with our engineering team, because I can't tell you what it costs to put a road in a hillside. That's not one of my skill sets. But working with our engineering team, what would it cost to realistically put this together? And what's the most it could cost? If we have in this area, working with these roads, working with these kind of layout patterns, and come up with that total maximum cost, and then figure out, well, if that is the total maximum cost, hopefully it's less than that, but if that is the total maximum cost, how do we pay for it? And there's a lot of things that go into that cost, and those are over here on the side. Engineering through construction, there is so much engineering and it's very expensive, and that just is what it is. Roads, water and sewer, legal fees through land sales, surveying the final plat and permit, the land purchase itself, obviously. There's electrical distribution. This would be from Green Mountain Power. We've been in touch with them and they've provided an estimate. And there's a lot of miscellaneous things that the engineers give you this long list of all these other little things that you have to add in there that cost a lot. And then you and then you have contingency upon contingency, and you add those all up together with, another allocation for both sales and construction management. And you come up with $2.5 million, which is a big number. I think it's a big number. I'm sure many of you do too. But relative to the scale of our town, it's not always the size of the number, it's how are you going to pay for it, right? We're looking at the bridge on Mill Street to replace the bridge. It's going to take like 5 years to do, and it's going to cost estimated somewhere preliminarily between $3.5 and $4 million. And nobody lives there, and it doesn't pay taxes. So these are big numbers at a personal scale, but they also are realistic numbers. And so this also assumes no grants whatsoever. That's the model we're going to walk through tonight, which, I hope we'll get some grants. I think it's likely, but we're doing a sort of worst case scenario. So how do we pay it back? If the reality is that we're in a good time for the real estate market, and lots in Vermont are hard to come by, particularly lots in town that have water and sewer and other utilities furnished to them. They have value. Anybody who's put in a septic system out in the country or a well knows that it's getting pretty darn expensive. So there's another thing that is really important to explain about this, is that some folks may be aware that there's a new zoning rule. There've been some new zoning proposal, and there's been proposal to reduce the minimum lot size, which is currently at 1/5 acre to 1/10. This project does not need that to go through, but what is important with regards to this project for that is that if we can have some smaller lots in town, we can make those lots more affordable. Because as is logical, if you're selling a smaller lot versus a bigger lot, you can sell the smaller lot for less. And so one of the goals earlier on, and I realize this wasn't well articulated in those set of goals at the top, but affordability is an important thing as part of this project. It was a really important thing that folks saw that came across in the survey results. I know affordability is a big conversation in Vermont these days, as is housing. So if these 1/8 of an acre lots, if we can, if the group has said, well, if we can reduce some cost, boy, it sure would be nice to try to get those even less expensive. Maybe getting 35 or possibly even 30, who knows? But it will not be possible to do those 1/8 of an acre lots unless the zoning update passes, permitting that to do so. So we can still sell 1/5 of an acre lots and 1/4 acre lots, and this project will still pencil out. They just will not be as affordable. So if we take all of the counts of these and we say we got 1/4 acre interior lots, there's some 1/4 acre lots on Main Street that would just be right along that Main Street area. I wish I could show you the map, but hopefully that makes sense. We have some 1/4 acre interior lots that we can sell for a little bit more. We have 1/3 acre lots that go back that border on the hayfield. And then we've got some nice 1/4 acre view lots that have sort of a beautiful view looking out over the town and the river and stuff like that. And we consulted with a realtor, actually somebody who owns a real estate agency in Vermont, who's been in the business for a very long time, about comparables on some of these things. And it really blew my mind that an in-town lot in towns in our area, especially hooked up with water and sewer, on a 1/4 acre sells for over $100,000 these days. And they move fast. So that was news to me. It was very surprising, but when we said, oh, we'd like to keep them under $100,000, the advice we got was they'll move quickly. It's not a guarantee, but we're going to talk about why we think we actually can do these. This does come out to 41 total. There are multiple ways to arrive to the same thing on the bottom. I don't know if Kirsty, are we able to just move this text over a little bit? Thank you. So if you take these counts, which only add up to 9 acres total, of which we have more than that we can build on. We had 41 lots, we get over $2.5 million. And this is just to say conceptually, again, there's lots of details here, but conceptually does this work? And the reality is that selling these 41 lots, we could configure them in different sizes. We can sell them for more than the amount that it costs to put this together. And this would be an endeavor undertaken by the town. This is our proposal. Again, we're a volunteer group. We don't have authority to do anything other than talk to people. So this is just to show conceptually this works. We go to the next slide. So did we skip one there? Or is that? No. Okay, sorry. I got a little jumbled in my own head. So how do we actually pay for that? Because we're going to have to borrow money to do that. And how would we actually borrow that money and do it? So in talking with the folks at the Vermont Community Foundation, who gave us that $35,000 grant for preliminary engineering, they are interested in loaning us the money to do this at a low interest rate, talking preliminarily of around 2%, which is a pretty good rate these days. This is not a signed agreement. Again, this is just a proposal about how this would work, but they're pretty serious. They said they'd send us $35,000 and they did. So, that's something. This would be an interest-only loan operating like a line of credit. So this is not an amortized loan when you're thinking about it. This would be, they would give us the amount of money we would need, and then we would pay them back the principal on lot sales with an annual interest payment. So, does that make sense? Okay, so if we have $2.5 million total and we sell, we have an initial commitment of people who want to buy lots of at least 10 lots, and those average lots are $50,000 each, which is at the low end of this kind of stuff. These slides will go up online, but you're welcome to take photos and some of this. That means we have a $2 million loan right there. So this, I'm going to talk about why we think we can get these pre-commitments and why we think these lots will sell quickly. But this is just to explain how we could see the math working. The $2 million loan, $2 million loan times 2% is $40,000 annual interest. Therefore, if we pre-sell 10 lots, it gives us up to, the reason I say up to 10 years to sell the rest, because we proposed with the Vermont Community Foundation, a 10-year loan, and again, it's not amortized. So it means that amortized means you have to, so you have in a loan, you have the principal, which is the amount you borrowed, and then the interest payment that you have to make on it. And so in a normal mortgage on a home, the debt is amortized, which means you pay in every payment some principal and some interest. In this circumstance, we only have to pay interest, and we can pay the principal whenever we want. And we'll only pay the money on the interest for the amount that we actually have borrowed. Some people call this a sort of line of credit type loan. And yeah, so if we sell a bunch of lots all at once, we can immediately pay that money back and stop paying interest. So that's why it says, therefore, if we sold 10 lots, it would, and I'll show you some math, I can walk through this chart math in a second. If we sell 10 lots and the average price is $50,000, that gives us $500,000 towards our principal cost. And if the new taxes on those lots, and this is how we're proposing to pay for the loan interest, is to use the additional tax revenue that would not exist were it not for this project that creates these new lots, to use the additional tax revenue from those houses, and this is low, this is ballparked at a lower number. The median house in Plainfield paid last year around $5,500 in taxes. So that would give us, so if we pre-sold 10 lots, it would allow us to cover the interest such that we could even if the other lots sold slowly, we would still have time to sell them. Because I think the thing that would probably that makes me the most uncomfortable, and I think would make a lot of other people uncomfortable, is like, well, what if all the lots take a while to sell? Well, this says if we sell if we sell a number of the lots at the beginning, we then have quite a bit of time. There's a lot of runway that's low risk to the town. And so now we could go to the next slide. Why do we think that we can pre-sell at least 10 lots? So we had an initial survey that's been circulating that has people expressing interest in buying a lot in this area. And so far, as of today, 25 people and families have filled out this prospective buyer interest form. And some of those people are folks that you know. Some of those people are displaced by the flood with FEMA buyouts pending. Some of those people are in this room. That doesn't mean they'll all buy. But we got 25 people that are interested, and feels like a wrong to pale, and wait, there's more. Downstreet, who's a housing organization I'm sure many of us are familiar with, has submitted a letter to us and had a conversation with us. This is a preliminary thing because we don't even know if this project is going to happen. Therefore, they're not going to commit to doing something. But they said they're very interested, if the project moves forward, to buy 5 lots for single family homes that would be built and available at below market rates as affordable housing. Additionally, Habitat for Humanity, which I'm sure many of us have also heard of, has also given us a letter that says they are interested in buying 5 lots for duplexes that would also be sold to people who would live in them. So all of these are for owner occupied housing available at below market rates through those specific organizations. These are the things that these are the data points we have that show there is significant interest in lots if they are available. So that's the very basic structure of the project economics and why we think that this is, as a comprehensive proposal, does pencil out in a way that becomes not only a successful financial investment in the town in terms of the long-term tax base that this creates for all these built houses, but it also is an investment in us as a community to say we want more housing and we'd like more housing that's in the village, that's feels like it's part of the village, and this is how we could do that. So the timeline here, we do have, as Sandy mentioned, an upcoming community design workshop to really work on the layout of the roads and the lots, and it is a big time commitment. But please consider joining us for that. I think it'll be very fruitful, and it would be it's a great way to get together to actually do that. We are requesting to put an item on the ballot for the March 4th town meeting. That would actually be part of the Australian ballot that would authorize the town to borrow the money for this to move forward. If that vote is successful, we would apply for local zoning permits, and then we could move forward with finalizing project construction costs and beginning lot sales. There's been a lot of discussion about lot sales, and we hope to have a robust conversation at the design workshop but also looking for additional input, and that would have to be something that would be formally organized under the town. Of course, we have some ideas and proposals, but that would need to be a formal program ultimately decided by the select board. But I think as with early on offering a priority to people who've been displaced by the flood, I think that resonates with most people. We also have some additional state permitting. We could do construction of roads. This is an ambitious schedule, but we've been moving quickly of roads and utilities and other infrastructure as soon as late August. With the people potentially putting in some initial construction as soon as October of this year. It is a rapid schedule, but we believe it is doable. Thank you. We want your input. Please come to the design workshop, and I think we're going to open it up for conversations and discussion. I would invite folks from the steering committee to come up here for the conversation if they're so inclined.
And so there are comments in the chat. So maybe we can start with what's already in the chat and then invite folks.
Yeah,
Does that work?
that sounds great. I mean, I would defer to Mary as MC.
Oh, please, no. Yes, I think that sounds good. We can go through those
So
quickly. Yeah.
the first question, where is the survey circulating? I'm thinking that this is maybe about the potential buyer.
It is there. You can see it. It's on the website prominently.
Wouldn't the tax estimate be based on property value after building is complete? Which means those property taxes won't be collected until at best 2026 or beyond.
That is absolutely true. And so there is the first year, because we don't collect property taxes, and I can just respond to that. We don't collect property taxes in this town until after something's already built. And I think it has to be in place in April 1st for it to go onto the tax roll. So the first year of interest on the loan would have to be rolled up into the loan in order for us to actually make that work. But that is calculated into the financials, and the community foundation sees no issue with that.
Other questions in the room?
Can I ask for clarification on? So the estimate that you gave, there was that slide that had the, like, how you use this tax revenue money to pay down some of that loan. That's assuming that people build within the first year of buying those first 10 lots.
It is assuming that people would buy a lot and that they would want to build on it right away. Yes. I think if it were an individual, they may have some restrictions in their timeline. If there's somebody who just got a buyout payment, they might move more quickly. If there's somebody who's building it themselves, they may move more slowly. If it's somebody from one of those nonprofit housing groups, they probably would move pretty quickly. There's some, yeah.
Arian, can I say one quick thing? We're also going to work with people who are on the prospective buyers list to figure out how they could group together construction to make that actual construction of the houses less expensive. For instance, if 4 houses were built at the same time, they could share one excavator for all the foundations and backfilling and driveway. So there are a lot of ways to bring down the price of the construction also.
It also would be helpful for people to know that there are other coalitions in the background who are watching this with a very interested perspective, including some folks that are on the list here, like the Hope Coalition in Barrie, where there are builders from the faith community who are willing to help folks who have trouble with money to build less expensively and have some existing designs that they can put down, sometimes for half the cost of building a typical house.
Yeah. You want me to run stack? How do you guys want to manage the questions? I can do stack in the room.
I'm sorry.
Well, maybe Paula wants to, yeah.
If
I-
you're there,
I'm doing
I'm having a
stack.
hard
Could
time
you-
seeing.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I'll sit over here, but do you want to run it between, do you want to bounce back and forth between Zoom and in person?
Sure, that feels fair. So since we just did one
Here,
Zoom,
one there.
We just did one Zoom, so maybe one in person now.
Okay, so in the room, when it's your turn, and look, I don't know what was first on stack here. I saw Betsy. And then I saw Scotty. So Nancy and Jamie. Is that it? In that order, Donruss.
I'm bringing up something that might seem.
Wait, before you,
Betsy.
I know, but I think so that's a speaker. And it's a camera. And so if you can get close to it, or if somebody there could repeat the question.
I'm happy to repeat if you're on the other side of the room too.
Okay, where do you want me to stand?
That's good, yeah.
that should be really good.
Great. All right, whatever.
We're set.
Yeah, but I'm bringing up something that is indirectly very related to this project, I feel. I just crossed the street, I'm sure you did too, to get here, across a very dangerous intersection. And I'm bringing this up because this impacts the future of our development here, our possible development, to have an intersection that is just dysfunctional and have the town for the last 35 years be struggling with how we were going to improve that. And we just recently, a couple of years ago, I know Tammy would remember, approved a proposed project of how this highway would be improved. And we haven't seen any action on that. And in fact, recently I just talked to a select board member who told me that new plan is to remove two parking spaces and change nothing else. And so I just feel like our town can't really grow. I feel like it's like a cancer in our village. We can't really grow until we have a safe and walkable intersection, that we have infrastructure that really works. And the other thing I want to say is that have we looked at any of the housing that exists already in the village that is not being used? There is rundown housing in this village. And why is that? Why can't, I mean, when we're talking about around the state of Vermont needing whatever, 180,000 houses, I don't know, there was a figure today. We have lots of housing needed. Why is it that our village has rundown housing? I assume part of it is because it's not that livable on Route 2. It's because developers own it and they are using it as a tax write-off.
They're warehouse. Thank you.
There's slumlords. To make that, address it in some way, there needs to be some way to address that we have 3 houses that I can tell on this east end of town that look like they're about to fall in. 2 of them definitely are starting to fall in, and they're unlit in for such a long period of time that that's what happened. So anyway, moving forward with this project, I think, I want to thank you for all this effort, but I hope that some effort from all this volunteer effort, somebody somehow, the select board can come up with a group of people who would put this kind of effort into getting our Route 2 project moving forward. Thank you.
You're on stack. What's your name? Penny? Penny? Yeah. Okay. You're on stack. I have Scotty next. I don't know if you want to be going back and forth.
Sure. The next comment was Janice, further, if new resident taxes are going to pay interest, then they are not going to pay for services that taxes are supposed to pay for. I don't know if we want to read all the chat or just the questions.
Oh,
to
just the
everyone.
questions.
Yeah.
Please.
Okay, so the next one is, so the tax revenue will not add to the tax rolls, replacing what was lost, as you were stating, but actually just serving the loan. And we won't get the tax money coming in until the houses are built. How much is the tax on the lot?
That's the slide.
I couldn't tell you what the tax is on just a lot that's unbuilt. I mean, that's kind of a Lister question, and we're also going through reassessment right now, but it's not very much. Most of the taxes, as I understand it, are just on the houses once they are built. It is, just looking at the question a little bit more, I think the question is best sort of answered, it's, I would say it depends on what time frame we're talking about, because if we're talking about in year one, yes, we are effectively no better off than we are, but this is an investment that is a long-term investment with a long-term view. That's how I would answer that.
All right.
Did we address Janice's question? I know it was red, but.
Was there a question?
Seemed like a
It
statement.
was a statement. Okay, great.
Scotty?
Yeah, just construction, I know it's hard to find people to build. I don't know if you've just thought about, like, who's doing the building? Are there enough people? You've got these, great projects going. Is there somebody who's gonna be really able to do the building, like, next year, this year, now, whatever it is? And the other thing is, as this is going on, let's say, and it all is happening, who oversees the project?
Andy, do you feel free to take it?
Yeah. So that is a sticky point. If the lots are not sold until July, it would be hard to line up a builder for the fall. There are other models. We've talked about the possibility of having temporary housing allowed on the properties, maybe a yurt or maybe a house on wheels. And this would solve the problem for families who have been dislocated by the floods and need a place soon. So there are certain people that don't mind living in very small houses for a while. The other is manufactured housing. And I think it's one thing, I mean, really nothing can move forward until after town meeting. But there may be a way to give some sense of surety to people as they're moving forward so they can set up construction earlier. And I think that's the best thing for how can we, there are a lot of people thinking now, how can they help? I've talked to a couple of construction companies and excavator companies who have said they really want to help in this project. Partly because it is not grant funded. This is a grassroots effort and they, out of the goodness of their hearts, would like to help. So, we've been really focused on getting these basics ready to share with the public and start on the design and figure out the subdivision. And that is the next step, is being very concrete about people who might be at build and how can we get that to be done most effectively. I also wanted to point, if I could just respond to the comment about traffic. It's an interesting question, but in the town as a whole, a lot of these lots are replacing lots that are gonna be ended. So the net burden on that pretty dysfunctional intersection should be approximately net zero, theoretically.
And the other part of that.
Oh, who oversees? Just found it. We haven't decided that entirely yet. I'm certainly willing to help continue. We're doing something that is unusual, and that's why I was saying everybody's watching this project. Vermont tends to default to developers who take 20% of the profit from the project. Therefore, it's hard to have affordable housing. Or these non-profit groups like Down Street. And there are a lot of other groups too. So having the municipality do this as an in-house effort, we have to figure this out. So some towns will hire a clerk of the works. It could be, and I've worked on 2 projects, both in Craftsbury, where they just figured it out on their own. Either someone who had construction skills volunteered, or they actually hired a clerk. As I said, I'm happy to keep volunteering. Maybe you could get Rick to help.
There's also another
There's
answer,
a lot of, we'll figure this out.
but there's an answer to that as well, that is, we may not have the exact solution, but we do have money in the budget for it.
Yeah. Another thing that's really interesting to me that is, if this is not a FEMA project, we don't have to follow federal procurement for the construction of the roads and the utilities. And we've already had interest of people who know how to operate excavators saying, why can't we do parts of this ourselves? and really bring the cost down. We can't talk about that in the project cost, because we have to assume the worst case scenario right now. But once we get real, I think we can do this together.
All right, so the stack as it stands, I just, because people are like. It's Nancy, Jamie, Don Rose, Alex, Penny, Liz. Is it Rose? I'm sorry, Don Robin. Penny, Liz, Charlie, Zoe, Michael, and Doug. That, so where are we?
Next question is, would the investment be made in infrastructure all at once or as lots are purchased?
You wanna answer?
Sure, we're looking at the model of doing it all at once. We've talked about dividing it into as many as 3 phases. It really is good. The delivery model is going to depend on what happens, after town meeting day. I think we'll have some discussions, but right now the thought and what's built in there is to do it all at once. There's a very sensible, if there are like little side roads in this, that they could be built at the same time as the house foundations. So by a smaller excavator company. So there are a lot of ways to do this, and we'll figure it out.
All right, so that brings us to Nancy.
Has there been any discussion in the group about like the design of the actual houses? Will that be totally left up to like the individuals buying it? Will there be sort of like a design group or, you know, like, are some designs available that you could choose from if you wanted to, or a person that the group is working with, or I'm just curious what the thought is about that.
Again, so I don't want to dominate all the answers, but that's also a really important answer. There are no design guidelines at this point. The village does not have design guidelines. The goal is to make this feel like part of the village. So right now, there are no design guidelines. And I am volunteering to work with people who are on the list I mean, there's some people who are really, really hoping to get one of these lots. And it helps them to start thinking about how we might get this to be financially possible for them.
Well, I mean, and I was even just thinking like from a standpoint of somebody who, you know, like if somebody wants to buy a lot and build something, you know, it can be pretty expensive to like hire somebody to design
Yeah.
something, and maybe you don't
Right,
have the money to do that. So you're like, well, you have some designs to choose from.
Right.
You know,
so coincidentally, the state of Vermont, their Agency of Commerce is working on a toolkit for families because they're realizing that exact problem. And they're trying to make it components that people can put together. As I said, I'm happy to volunteer helping people design their houses. And I know I mean for free. And Huntington Homes has offered to help. They have stock models. And if they did 2 or 3 houses in a row, they could put them all, they take care of the foundations and everything. They just put the houses right down. Their Connor Construction does panelized construction. They have models. There's a lot of resources available.
So, how much is the land purchase going to cost, and why are we paying for 23 acres when you're only building on 9?
I could try at that if you want. You know, in Vermont, it seems like something is either hillside or swamp or both. And so when you can find a lot like this that has that much developable land, that's a pretty good ratio, I think, of usable land to actual land purchase. So I think that's a good thing to do, to buy that much land. You have to own it, and you get good value out of it.
And
How much is the cost? That was in the question.
So so the interesting thing about this is that the municipality, the town, is not out to make a profit on this. So as we bring down the price of construction, we can bring down the lot prices.
Yeah, I think his
Okay.
question is about the overall land, so it's gonna be subject to appraisal, and that appraisal hasn't been done.
Oh.
We have some estimates in there where we think it's gonna show up in the budget, but the final number will be publicly negotiated because it will be a public purchase and will be subject to appraisal.
What,
So you don't know?
We have a range in the budget that we believe it's gonna come in at, but no, we have not appraised the land at this time.
so what is the range?
Is that fair to say at this point?
Sometimes you can't say that at this point.
Yeah.
It makes it takes the advantage away from you as the community to talk about an amount being out there. So I don't know, do you?
So,
How do you come up with a final number if you don't have that figure?
Because we basically estimated the most we think it could possibly cost, but. Personally, I don't think we should pay the most it could possibly cost. And if we say that this is the most it could possibly cost, it sounds like we have agreed to that price. Does that make?
Interesting. So if the number becomes public knowledge, it changes our negotiating, like.
The assessed value right now.
Yeah.
It's like yeah, it's in the tax records. I don't know off the top of my head, but it is in the tax records of the assessment. Of course, everything's getting reassessed right now.
And I'd like to answer that question in a slightly different way as well, which is that when you talk about why, if you're selling 9 acres worth of house lots, are you buying 23? There's been quite a lot of sentiment that there should be green space. I mean, woods and walkways and places where people can enjoy the outdoors. So if we were to talk about buying just 9 acres worth of lots for lot building, there would be no green space. And therefore, this is actually built into the community sentiment.
All right, so, that brings us to Jamie.
First, thank you so much for your work, and I know I've been really hard on this. I think my main question is just about the presentation is all about single family lots. And, I'm just thinking about some of the housing that we lost, was multifamily rentals. And just the importance for our community of really having a mixed income community where there's options for folks who don't want to own their own single family home. And so the possibility and I know and it's maybe a controversial thing to say, but that I think our village centers need to have greater density. And so how do we think about also the uses of this land to have some greater density? And some, I saw, you mentioned, I can't remember if it was Down Street or Habitat proposing some duplexes, but I'm thinking even more density. I think, apartments, yeah, like an apartment building, like an 8-unit something that could be a rental also. So opportunities for people who aren't prepared to buy and own and build their own structure, but to be able to rent, who aren't ready for home ownership or aren't interested in home ownership.
Yeah, I'll take that one. We have envisioned a multi-use, multi-dwelling, thank you, subdivision. And it would be possible to have, as long as it fits with our zoning, it would be possible to build a Plainfield scale apartment. If somebody wanted to do a 4 or an 8-unit building, but there has to be somebody who wants to do that, because we're not talking about actually building the buildings themselves. But if somebody were to step up and say, I want to do that, they could, a lot could be designed that would be the right size for that, and they would be able to. And the money, are you going to mention the money that 2 million? Yeah, I don't remember who it's from though, Sandy. What is
for the small apartments.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a new loan fund, and if anybody is interested in building anything from 2 to 8 or even more units, please put your name on that list of interested prospective buyers. Because we're happy to work with you. There's a loan fund that will loan up to $1 million at 2% interest for people building small apartment buildings. I was also gonna point out that the Vermont state law is now that any single family home property can have an ADU, which is a small accessory dwelling unit. And, Habitat specifically builds duplexes. They are for home ownership, but it would be completely fine to, have two owners or someone who knows someone else to figure this out on their own too. But we're happy to work, we really would like to work with someone who wants to have a small apartment building. And some of the pressure of rental is taken off of Plainfield. We don't know what's happening with Goddard right now, but that sounds like it will be heavily rental.
Down Street hasn't been interested in any rental.
Down Street won't build less than 25 units.
A rental property, not
Right.
houses, rental.
Right.
So the five,
Still paying taxes.
Hmm?
Goddard never paid taxes and the new housing will.
Yeah,
yes.
okay, so are you,
Yep, so what happens if people don't build right away?
I think we already had that question out there.
Yeah.
That's been on the table.
What was the answer?
That some people may take more time than others. I mean, in this buying process, one of the things we've talked about, is there a covenant or some sort of mortgage that comes in that is a forgivable mortgage on the property that says if people don't build within a certain amount of time or they sell the property, there's like a lien against it that the town holds. That basically would, these are very preliminary ideas and would need to be explored further, but there are mechanisms where you can put a lien against a property or forgivable lien that has certain restrictions on it, such as you take that property and you sell it speculatively to somebody else, all of a sudden there's a $50,000 lien on it. The things that we can do that would be ultimately forgiven if somebody takes it and they build the property and live in it for a certain number of years, then it's like, okay, great. They decided to sell it and build a house and sell it in 5 years. All right, that's a reasonable thing. We could all agree with that. But if they did something where it's like they just sat on it, there would be certain penalties tied into that. So there are mechanisms for that, to sort of make sure that people just don't go just sit there.
Okay. So.
Yeah, my question is about how these lots are zoned. I'm thinking about like mixed use buildings in the village right now. There are things like the Positive Pie building. I think it's just such a sweet building. There's space for like 3 shop fronts on the ground level and space for 3 apartments above. It would sadden me to see this development become a purely residential thing that empties out during the day. And that doesn't generate any like business tax revenue for the town. So I'm wondering if any of these lots or this development as a whole will be zoned for like mixed use buildings and things like that.
So the zoning is the same in the village everywhere per that zoning map. So if it's allowed in the village now, it's allowed in this area. The key with all of these things is who's going to show up and build it. So somebody has to want to build that mixed use building.
Yeah. One thing I should also add is that there's an emphasis on walkability. The idea that people who live there would be able to get access to the village, that there would be potentially sidewalks and trails and stuff that would make it easy to go back and forth. And included in that is the idea that whatever services we lack right now, like a laundromat, might potentially step into this area, that people would look at what we really felt we had a need for and encourage people to come in and do that.
And Michael, that actually ties in pretty perfectly to our next Zoom question. Are there any estimates for improvements the town would want to make to support the development, but is not the development itself? Since this is supposed to be walkable, I'm specifically thinking of pedestrian infrastructure. So what are the estimates for that?
We have them in the budget. We have 2 paths in the budget.
Yeah, but in terms of outside of this area, I know Alice Merrill and others, there were designs for more sidewalks and other infrastructure in the village. I've seen a copy of the final engineered plans that were all done, and we only did half of the village. So there are those other plans. We all know sidewalks and stuff are very expensive, but I got them from Alice Merrill. They're like 4 years old, and they're there if we wanted to move forward on them and have the budget to do it.
And I should say that one of the drivers, Betsy Bigler, who spoke earlier,
Yep,
and that the other part of the picture that isn't actually what we're not talking about is Goddard. And they're also talking about extending the village district to include that and including sidewalks to there, which adds another another group of people who need those services. In other words, they need small grocery stores like the Co-op, but they also need some other kind of services that really we don't have to drive to Montpelier to do if we could have them locally.
And I will say, from the regional planning point of view, there's so much funding. If you just have to get it together to apply for it, for making pushing, this whole state is trying to keep development in central areas instead of spreading it all over, right? That means making them walkable, that means grants for sidewalks, that means grants for stormwater. There's a lot of money out there. We're not like sitting here magically generating grants, this is something that the town has to tackle down the line, I think. All right, can we move on?
Your turn.
Alex.
So this is so thrilling. I'm so interested in health and community and holy shit, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I think we need spaces where people are interacting. We live on a long dirt road. I love all my neighbors. Some of you are here, but we drive by each other all the time. We really miss what people in Montpelier have, which is face-to-face interactional spaces. This is thrilling. I'm gonna just stop in and hang out there. Open up a workshop and keep gardening.
Yeah, bring your trailer down.
Say to Betsy, we can't fix the Route 2 problem. That's the state, and the state came, I don't know if you were at the presentation, but we have to put pressure on them, but they also have to be a partner in putting a light and changing the way, it looks like you know something. It looks like we need a bigger conversation about the way Route 2 is and the light and the safety of getting there. So I agree with getting it safer, but it's not just on things.
And one last little piece is that one phrase that didn't come up yet in the conversation is community center. And I'm not talking about replacing the community center that's under discussion above the Co-op, but rather a place where children's arts classes could happen in the summer, a place where people could gather together for an elder support group, or some things that just all the things that spontaneously happen when you have a group of people living near each other, they have some kind of community space there too. We're not sure how it would come into being and where the cost of that would come from. It wouldn't necessarily be a private developer or an individual family. We don't know yet, but that's also one of the things that would be a positive if we had a new group of people that come together, living near one another.
I have 8 people who are still in the stack and they're in the room.
I think it's fair to go back and forth.
Yeah.
I think, okay. Unless other people disagree.
No,
Okay.
I think
Fair.
it's a Zoom meeting.
Okay, so this next one, those financial figures came at us fast and furious. Question, as we know, the town administration is being pushed to the limit right now. Who will oversee this project? Who will be responsible for decisions about who gets to build, move in, if there are many applicants? What safeguards are in place? I feel strongly that this year's town meeting is too early to vote on such a large and town-changing project. So there's a few questions in there.
I could try to tackle some of those. So there's a few key aspects of the project that we do have already a commissioner and a commission in place. For example, the Water and Wastewater Commission is very aware of this project, very interested in it. Anybody who lives in the village knows that they really want more users. Many of us also know that we have a nationally acclaimed water and wastewater operator here in town, Tristan, who just won a big award, and he's great. So it is not to say that they would manage the entire project per se, but they have expressed a strong interest, along with the roads commissioner, of being involved in the conversation, because we wouldn't want to do anything in this project that didn't work well with the current system or the current Water and Wastewater Commission, the current roads foreman and the current roads commissioner. So there has to be some interaction with those folks. You know, additionally, we have budgeted a sum for construction management that we discussed earlier that is a significant amount.
And sales.
And sales. So I do think that there is a way, and we've talked about this, of not making this like, the town clerk's job or something like that. You know, there is, I understand also to say, well, why are we doing this now? Well, you know, for the people who lost their house in July, the end of this year doesn't feel that soon. And so I think we are trying to move forward in a reasonable and prudent way, while also acknowledging that we do have a disaster recovery on our hands that requires us to act with a certain amount of urgency. You know, the houses, I have been told I am also the volunteer town buyout coordinator. So I've been working with all the families who've been dealing with the buyout and contacting with Vermont Emergency Management. And they expect everybody who's offered a buyout, and they're optimistic that Plainfield, with our current situation, is going to receive a lot of offers. But that those are offered and accept will close by the end of 2025. Which means that they will not it means, one, they'll have a nice check in their hands, hopefully, and two, they will need to find a new place to live. So these are these other timeframes that are an important part of the whole picture that is what's happening in Plainfield.
Okay, so, that brings us to Penny.
Hi, my name is Penny. I live in Martin Meadows. Thank you all for all the work that you have done. First of all, can we stop calling it the village? In 1986, we merged the town and the village, so it's Plainfield Town. That's what it's actually called. That's number one. Number two, do you get to approve the buyouts for FEMA? Because I know in Barry, FEMA could offer a buyout, but the town of Barry can say no.
So the town did pass a preliminary approval for the buyouts. Like the people who are taking the buyouts, if the town were to decide it didn't want to move forward with any particular, so there was a preliminary approval that was given, and we also engaged the state to manage the buyout process for us, so that we didn't have to get an appraiser or a lawyer or a demolition company to come in and do that. They offered that as a free of charge service, and they've been great, because my job as a volunteer on just that would be really difficult if I had to make all those arrangements. So, but the town and the person, up until the day of closing, or the family that owns the house, can opt out of any particular buyout. And there will be an update. We're expecting sometime in February, we've been told by the state, that we will hear on the remaining buyouts that were pending. There are 3 from 2023 that have been approved and are moving forward. They're all going into appraisal right now.
So basically the town of Plainfield, i.e. you, I guess.
No, the select board. I just moved paper around.
So the select board has essentially agreed to all the FEMA buyouts?
That is correct. Yes, that's correct. Yep.
And so based on what you said earlier, apparently the sewer system has enough place to add on all these.
We just in real terms, we had capacity ahead of now, and we've already lost 16 allocations in the town, and we will lose up to 29 total. And we had over 100 available allocations according to state standards ahead of time. So we're now looking at something like 140 allocations that will be available on the current wastewater system. I mean, as the Water Commission says, we could start a water bottling factory in Plainfield. We have so much water, but the wastewater side is the limiting factor. So
got Goddard coming on here potentially.
and that counts that as well, though, because they have a huge allocation already given to them. And so when they say there were 100 available, it's already factoring that Goddard has a huge amount that it doesn't use, that's already been set aside.
So what is their allocation right now?
I couldn't tell you what the exact number off the head. I know the total number of allocations. It's something like Goddard is 40% of the system. It's something like that.
You have to remember, there was a time in Goddard, I mean, it comes in as a result of the fact that there used to be 320 students in residence there.
Yeah, Goddard basically funded the school.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we're 30% fewer people funding that plan. and it's gonna hurt
Yeah.
next year.
And there's gonna be more cost if we do fix this Route 2 problem that I know there's more traffic. I've lived here for 63 years. It's been that way
Too.
since I was born. And I know there's more traffic, so perhaps it's more dangerous, but if the state does come in and fix that, then what has to happen to the sewer? Cause I remember that there was gonna be something about people who were on the sewer had to pay.
Yeah.
Because the town was gonna have to pay for the replacement of the sewer line.
Yes,
underneath
the
road.
town
So
is
that's
on
gonna be
board for that.
$300,000-$400,000 bill.
Yeah.
If I'm not
And we don't have the money for
I
that.
think the ARPA money was going to be used for that, but that may have changed since the flood. I don't, somebody else could probably speak to that better than I can.
And the last question, Down Street and those that are nonprofits would actually be paying taxes? Because nonprofits don't usually pay taxes, so.
So the home, they develop a house and they sell it to somebody who then owns it and pays taxes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they're low income, there would be no reduction in taxes or anything?
There
for
is
them?
some, I don't know the exact details of that. They do get a slight discount, but they do pay taxes, and I don't know the number off the top of my head. It's not like it's 70% or something like that.
I can answer that question as a low income person, that the income of the person who owns the property
Oh, that's
is
a good
goes
point.
into a homestead declaration. The homestead declaration helps the state determine what percentage that person pays and what percentage the state will pay. So the amount that is paid to the town is equivalent.
Is equivalent to somebody else would.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay,
Time check.
Time
Yeah.
check, we already.
We're a
Yeah.
little late, but we'll keep moving.
how many people who were affected by the flood are actually willing and able to make a commitment to buying and building a house on this land, especially given current FEMA buyout delays?
There are at least, I think there are at least 4 families already on the list of prospective buyers. And there's actually one family from Barry who lost their house in the Barry floods.
So yeah, we're working in the room anyway, we're working on one person, you get to speak once and then you get back on the stack. I don't know if that's what's happening on Zoom, but I just wanted to time check that one. Liz, you are up.
It's been a while. What did I
I
have? I have so much written down. So one of my main questions is, when is the design going to be approved? So you have the work group date of February 8th, but when is that going to be voted on at town meeting as well as the 2.5 million?
Do you want?
You said.
Well, so again, we're a committee of volunteers who's moving forward with the proposal and we have no authority to do anything. But the proposal is that the town has to authorize the borrowing. That's the state law that says it's gotta go up for town vote to do the bartering. And how the decisions are made after that are up to the select board. And so it's very likely, we would propose that there be a committee that is created by the select board to work through these kinds of things to make sure that this happens, subject to open meeting law, et cetera, so that we can move these things forward in an official way.
So the purpose of the February 8th design.
Yes, is to develop a plan that we can say this was sort of ground sourced by the folks in town who showed up to participate in it.
It's just kind of an opportunity for people who have an opinion to voice their opinion and how this should be.
How the layout of the roads and the lots should be.
Okay, because, I mean,
We're
In my-
actually gonna end up with a design.
But is it binding? Is that binding?
That's
Right.
the thing is,
a
Yeah, that's
design
what I
or
asked.
like multiple designs to be chosen from, like,
the way we're structuring it right now is to end up with 2 or 3, or maybe 1 designed by the end of the afternoon on February 8th.
to kind of float out.
Yeah, and we're still we're still working this through.
Yeah, I would
But-
suggest like at least 3. You always give the customer 3 choices.
Yeah, right, and then my thought is to have another public meeting after that to anyone who's interested to try to help blend it together. We have to work very quickly between that, because then the engineer has to price out what is finally come upon. And that will be the pricing for March 4th.
Right, so yeah, because my concern is the way you currently have estimated the lot sizes are incredibly small, which I understand the green space, but I also know that people like to have chickens, people like to have gardens, people like to have those ancillary apartment, you know, a shed, stuff like that. So these are like literally just big enough for dwelling. It's not giving you any personal green space, which whatever, you know, some people dig that. I think majority of people do not. So I think Plainfield needs to consider that when we're looking at a community that's gonna be here forever, or for a long time, listen to that. I don't remember, I lost my train of thought, so thank you.
But that's an important discussion that's gonna happen table by table on the 8th.
Yeah.
Because I know I live in Montpelier, I happen to own 1/3 of an acre, I have 3 residences on my land. And we garden, we feed ourselves, all of our vegetables, and we grow enough for 3 families on 1/3 of an acre, including our houses.
But a lot
So-
of people don't wanna.
But I don't think many people
Like,
think
I
you
don't want
want
to
that
commute.
kind of
I love my
space.
neighbors, but I love a fence. So that's, I think a lot of people like that. So my question is, so 9 acres, are kind of slotted for development in this thing. So the rest of the acreage is owned by the town?
That's also up for discussion.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We've already heard from the lister that while she can't legally give us numbers, she expects that Goddard will replace most of the lost grand list. Why are you still using that as a goal for this expansion?
That's not what Sandy Ross, who's been part of our group, said. That's all I can say to that.
Making it better than before the flood would be great.
Would be great too.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So Charlie,
Charlie Cockbill. I hear you're planning to have a town vote. I wonder 2 parts of the question. How are you going to bring that vote in front of the town meeting? And secondly, will that question that is brought on the warning be a public question, a budget question, which, by the way we run our town, have to be voted on at the meeting? Or another process, which I hear, which is that the town will authorize the borrowing. Does that mean that the town will borrow the money?
Yes.
Will that be the question that is brought before the public?
Yes.
Yeah, so can I, so I've spoken both with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns and also the recent bonding attorney that the town used for the money that was given by the state, so for cash flow on the FEMA repairs. And so if you want to borrow any money as a municipality for more than 5 years, it has to go to Australian ballot. And we have several items that will be on Australian ballot. So the request that has been submitted to the select board with specific language that was provided by the bonding attorney is to put a balloted item that authorizes the borrowing up to $2.5 million for a period not to exceed 10 years. And there's some other stuff in there that is a long paragraph, but that's the gist of it.
2 points. The borrowing beforehand by the bond was not brought in front of the town. It was brought in front of the select board. The
Yeah.
town had no say at that. I applaud everyone to please let the town make an educated decision. And you said you had several questions. Are they already petitioned to go on the warning?
There's one question.
No, oh, he meant that there will be other things.
You said
We always
there'll be
have an
other things
Australia.
brought in front of
No,
the
no,
public.
not from us.
Yeah.
There will be other things. on
The
Australia.
zone, for example, the zoning proposal has to be Australian balloted as
But
well.
that isn't in front of the town at this town meeting.
It will be.
It will be.
It probably will be.
Okay, be aware, there are some deadlines to get things
We know.
on
Yep.
the ballot.
Yep. The town clerk's office is aware of this, as is the select board.
It's 2 weeks from now.
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing the questions. If it's gonna be brought by petition, that petition should have the exact wording of the question brought before the public. I look forward to seeing it.
Okay, we've touched on this a bit already, but maybe we can expand a little. If buyers design their own homes, what is the purpose of the charrette?
Buyers buy their own homes, what is the purpose of the charrette?
The purpose of the charrette is to determine where the roads are going to be in the development and what the lot sizes and appearance are. It's basically designing the subdivision
And green space and other
and
things like,
green spaces and any land that may be set aside for community uses.
Okay. Zoe.
Oh, I actually don't have a question anymore, but I fully support the project and really appreciate all the work that's done. I know definitely be putting in.
All right, go to Michael.
Okay, some of my questions have been answered. I just wanna recapitulate what I think I hear is happening. There's a seller that's Bram America, I believe, and there's a buyer, and that's the town of Plainfield. And then the town of Plainfield is gonna own all the land and then sell some of the lots to individual buyers who could do what they want within some limitations. Is that all correct so far? And that's 8.9 acres of land, and the rest of the land at the moment would be owned by the town unless you change the plan and make that into some kind of commons that community of lots owns, or that the town owns as park, or I'm not sure about how that common land becomes divided or not divided.
So some of the residual has to be the roads and right of ways for utilities
Sure.
and stormwater systems. And that actually takes up a significant, we're trying to figure out exactly what that acreage is without knowing the design yet. But we're doing our best to try to get that quantified. And then the residual land could be, as you described, it could also be somehow attached to some of the other lots. Or it could actually be sold on its own. There's a lot of possibilities that we want to try to help define what the possibilities are and let the community decide.
And so when does that happen? That happens on February 8th?
Yes, it will be a busy day.
Okay, my next question is. Have you gotten firm legal opinion that the revised version of Act 250 no longer applies to this lot?
So right now, Act 250 does apply to this lot.
Okay, so why wasn't that in the timeline?
I don't know why it wasn't in the timeline, but the
There's a local
town is
permit,
applying
so-
for a NDA. Neighborhood Development Area. And the neighborhood development area keeps review at the town municipal level.
so this is a new program at the state. There are Act 250 reforms. There's been a number of them. They seem like they may continue to happen. There's a program that's in place right now for towns to apply for areas that are immediately adjacent to the existing town, like they're touching. To apply for an area that would then make that area exempt from Act 250 review. So the intention would be, if this moves forward by a town vote, that we would apply for that in April. We have already worked with the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission along with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development to review an application, that draft application that we would submit. And they have said they think this looks like we would have a good shot at getting this.
And would the wetlands have an effect on that decision?
Well, there is always wetland review, and that's part of the permitting process, but that is handled separately from A&R, handled separately by A&R as one of the state permits that we have to get.
So this project regardless will have to go through the state's permitting process for road construction and land disturbance and stormwater management and water and wastewater. So there are several permits that we have to get regardless of the.
Okay, so don't get me
zoning.
wrong, I am not an opponent, I'm supporting this
Yeah.
idea, but it seems to me like. As urgently as we want to get this done, there are a lot of things that are gonna slow it down and need to get it done right. And I guess I have several more, but I don't wanna
Yeah.
dominate, I'm gonna just ask one more question, and that is. Why isn't the committee directly coordinating with Mr. Davidson? On what's gonna happen at Goddard? So where's the complement of rental versus homeowners and all of that? Why aren't we working together?
Well,
Is
you've
he
talked
unwilling
about-
or are you unwilling? Or is
No,
nobody thought-
nobody's unwilling.
Okay.
I think it's much more of a, I mean, I know many of us have had conversations with him and, you know, he seems like a very nice fellow with really good intentions. And I think, I would say all of these projects are very, at least speaking personally, I see them as very complementary. I would say there are some distinct differences in the sense that the Goddard conversation is one private landowner who, is, self-defined as a redeveloper, who is not planning on building new buildings over there. There's a lot of buildings over there. And the conversation more in this area is definitely aimed a lot more at owner occupied housing. Not to say there couldn't be some apartments there as well, because if somebody did want to build that. So I think there's a real conversation where those, in the element alone between owner occupied and rental housing, there seems to be some distinct differences. But I also think has been voiced by some other members later is, all of the above helps, right? Like, it's not A, it's not B, it's like all of the above checkbox, that really, I think, can help the town.
Yeah, there's another important thing to add into your perspective, that, as I said in the very beginning, the town's been turned upside down. The townspeople a lot of them are traumatized and in emotional distress. It's still, carrying that. And amongst the things that people don't necessarily bear in mind, but all of the houses that you saw being removed in that visualization, what looked like a great big park in the middle of the town. The way a buyout works is that once a property owner is approved for buyout, the state buys the property from the property owner and gives it to the town of Plainfield. So we haven't calculated yet what acreage will be added in the center of the town, but that whole long strip will belong to the town. So that's yet another planning part. Will it be community gardens? Will it be grazing? Will it be picnic shelters? Will it, there are things that are allowed to happen on that community owned land. So we're going through an incredible planning process, which could be very thrilling if it works well. And that's one of the reasons to have this charrette. It's just to think about everything in context with everything else as best we can.
Okay, how have increases in traffic and other environmental impacts been considered in this planning process, especially on residents close to the development? I would love to think that this has been part of the conversation. I am unconvinced this project represents a near one-to-one replacement of what was lost in the village area in the flood, given the number of lots that are being proposed and the fact that, I lost my spot, and the fact that, quite a number of these would be multi-dwelling units.
So part of that question is answered by the town plan, that the town plan has designated this area to become denser.
It's in the village.
And then we have to do traffic studies with the roads. Part of getting the permits. What were the other?
On the same question. Yes.
So,
People wanted to move here before the flood too, and still want to move here.
Say that again.
People want to move here and wanted to move here before the flood and still want to move here after the flood. And so I don't think our goal is a one-to-one replacement of the houses that were lost.
and how have increases in traffic and other environmental impacts been considered?
So traffic's part of the general permit and, it, at least trips per day and very specific items, the environmental impacts is, covered. I think items that you're talking about from, one would talk about from Act 250 of, removing minerals from the soil and air quality impacts. So the NDA applies to uses that don't do those kinds of things. It's not an industrial project.
Okay. So we only have 3 people left on stack. That's Doug, Dan Kitchen, and I think Dan, did he leave? He's out of here? You wanna ask his question for him, or it's just, okay, I was joking, and Tammy, you might get the last word. All right, so Doug, you're up.
I'm not opposed to this. However, when you ask a direct question and you don't get answers, it kind of makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't see how you can come up with a number for the maximum when you don't have any idea what the subdivision looks like, where the road's gonna be. Can I go across a class 2 wetland with a road, which I don't think you can? Is Act 250 gonna be involved, which I think it is? Is the road gonna be a town road? If it is, you can't make it on a 12 to 15 degree grade, which is what was on that map. There's a lot of things that haven't been answered, and absolutely the town should not be the developer. We can barely run the town the way it is. But I'm not against you. Just saying. I don't wanna end up footing the bill for something that is not well thought out. And also, is the town gonna pay for the extension of the water and the sewer? Because typically a developer pays for that to bring that into their development.
And will the East Hill is in the water and sewer? And the lines from there down gonna be increased?
I think the main that runs under Main Street and up that way is
So those were really important questions. And thank
Yeah.
you. And if you want to be on this committee,
I
and help
know.
me out, I'm so glad. But, the engineer has worked on all of those and, including working with your town and, the town sewer wastewater department. They're figuring out how the connection will work. We can, because we know the approximate, size of the land, and we can guess the lot size and we can guess the number of houses. We're at the upper end when we're trying to estimate ahead of the town design, the community design. We're estimating at the upper end so that we are always doing the worst case scenario to make sure that we can cover anything that's less that the group wants to do. And we have actually met with the Corps of Engineers already.
Isn't the
It
engineer going
proactively.
to the design party?
The engineer will be at the design day.
Have you got an answer whether you can put a road across a class 2 wetland?
The answer is they don't want us to, but if we need to for our emergency vehicles and for other reasons that zoning requires, through access, then the answer is yes, and we're already working on that with them.
I would suggest you get that in writing.
Yeah.
Because I have dealt with them before, and I
Yeah.
would be very surprised.
I agree. We are working on it.
But like I say, with all of those unanswered questions of, you don't even have a site plan. And without a site plan, how can you possibly come up with the worst case scenario, because you don't even know what the best case scenario is? I mean,
They're actually,
I
we're
look at
doing that.
things maybe a little differently than some, because I usually end up paying for it. And I don't wanna end up paying for this one.
Right. It seems to be moving at a very fast pace compared to other projects in the state of Vermont.
Yeah.
Right.
It's,
And it's just, it seems to me that it's just getting, and for lack of a better word, I'm sorry, getting rammed on the public's throat. Okay, so that's the perception that I get. I'm not against it, plan such imagination, all for it, like this gentleman over here, but he's right, there are a lot of unanswered questions that you're gonna be asking the voters to say yes or no to. That simple. And I think it is that simple.
Another question is, I guess, if we weren't a town, if this was a developer, would this be going through? So is this project coming to the town
Okay,
and being on our plate?
You've got
Because
the
this
floor.
wouldn't go. Oh, sorry.
no, it's,
Sorry,
it's you.
With them, but I- Can you say it again, though? It's started though.
Can you say
is
what
this-
you were saying? I couldn't
So
say.
basically, is this project happening on the town's dollar because it can't happen on a developer? So why are you not getting a developer to come in and do this project and taking the risk off the taxpayers?
Can I try and just talk about that a little bit? I think that when you think about a project like this from a developer standpoint, I think about it as happening in a couple of ways. One way that it happens is we don't do anything like this, and all the development continues to be along Route 2. Because it's easy, has good access, and we really take away all the walkability. That's what's happening now. Another way that it could happen is like a homeowner developer, home builder developer could come in and buy all the site, make all the development and put up, I don't know, maybe 6 or 8 houses on there. And they would be upper middle class houses. And they probably wouldn't generate the kind of fabric that we're talking about, and they certainly wouldn't allow us to do the low income things that we're talking about. So that profit that we heard about before is what we're trying to work within here and keep in the community's control somehow. A third way that this might happen, and developers are creative, they'll come up with all sorts of different ways to do something, is they could come in, buy the entire thing and put as large a rental type project in there. I don't really think that's in the best interest of the town because we already are seeing new rental happening at Goddard, hopefully. So trying to create owned homes is probably what we need at this point in order to increase vitality. And trying to create something that is affordable allows us to have more, hopefully younger people moving into the community. And I just think that if the town doesn't keep some kind of control over a project like this, it's very hard through regulation to get what we have sought out to do and what our surveys are saying that we'd like to do. And that's the rub that I feel is important here. And I really struggle with that question because a lot of times a developer would be a great way to do it. They aren't going to be able to do, they aren't going to want to do, they're not going to profit from the things that we're talking about.
And just to add on to that, when Bram and Erica bought the land in 15 years ago or whatever, it was slated for development. There was going to be this is my understanding, is that there was going to be like a very suburban cookie cutter kind of development that was going to go in there. And they bought the land because they had said they wanted to do a more plain field type development, was I think kind of how they put it. And they, which didn't end up happening. But the fact that there was a developer at that time, I think makes it very likely that if, it's very likely that if the town doesn't move forward with this, somebody will develop that land. And whether that development is going to be the kind of development that we want to see right next to the center of the village of the town of Plainfield, as I was corrected earlier, I think it's a real question.
Can I?
Yeah.
2 seconds, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say that all of the volunteer effort you see in front of you right now would be paid for if the developer were doing this. And a developer would probably not get 2% interest. And it all adds up over time that the cost of the lots would be right up against the ceiling of what is the maximum available, reasonable price for the lots. So we are trying to make lots that are affordable. It's part of our vision. if you
But I
will.
think typically a developer would do exactly that, they would create a development.
With McMansions.
Right.
Yeah.
Look
You're-
at the
they would
Carter
do-
development on Town Hill Road, it's just like every 5 years, someone builds a huge house over there and no character.
Right.
I think this kind of ties into the next Zoom question as
I
well.
was gonna say one thing about Act 50, just, you know, the change, how many, I don't know how many people here have actually looked into it, but I think we fall into like the tier B category. We're not a city, we're not like Colchester where the, you know, all the bets are off. There is no Act 50 if you're building in a city. Their Act 50 has been decreased significantly in the vicinity of settlements. Okay, so those restrictions have changed a lot. And what you're gonna see in the next few years is a whole lot of housing going up around towns. And so the likelihood of that field remaining a field indefinitely is pretty small. Now,
In the likelihood of it being very, kind of. The sweet spot of Vermont larger home, affordable, what they're called, but they're like, they start at 500,000, 600,000. And we are trying to come up with houses that are $300,000. Or less, cause yeah. I mean, we're looking at.
we have Ren and Tammy, did you wanna say something about the Route 2 intersection?
I feel like we're totally,
Yeah, Tammy had the floor and she was gonna speak to the Route 2 intersection, but we can come back to it.
So is there another entity, not the town, that could borrow the money and manage the project in partnership with all you wonderful volunteers, a nonprofit, regional planning commission? Have you considered other options?
I can speak to that. There is a lot of sense to the town managing the project in the sense that if we want this to be on town water and sewer and we want it to be on town roads, we can make it what we want it to be. The other flip side of that is that as a municipality, we actually are eligible for a lot of funding from the state that is not available to anybody else. So there are some real things that facilitate doing this. Plus, this is, my total philosophical position. I think it's cooler if the town does it, and that's just me.
I should also add that the 5 lots that are, where strong interest is committed by Habitat for Humanity, and the 5 lots where strong interest to do duplexes, so 5 times 2, and then also the 5 lots for Down Street, that wouldn't happen with a private developer either. And that immediately opens the door to, again, how low income families or middle income families can purchase homes that otherwise could not do so and would be attracted to come to Plainville.
So, Tammy, did you want to talk about Route 2?
I can,
Briefly?
so, I mean, the Route 2 projects, when I was on the select board, we were basically down to, 2 projects the town had, or the state had offered the town. The town had done a full town survey along with many community, outreach. And we actually adopted the major project. So we had agreed as a select board to go forward with that major project. As indicated, we were, and when I got off the board, we had talked about using the ARPA money. It looked like, based on some research, I think they only have about 85,000 left. The project is, I don't know what it is now, but yes, if we come up with a project, the project was, and I don't have my numbers right here, but it was like 350, 400 is where we're at for that. But the town only has to pay for the pipes. So it's kind of a good deal for the town. I will say that if we don't move forward and the state decides to come through, we will get the lower project and kind of the minor project and get less. So they're kind of, it's up to us. But if we don't move soon, they're coming through and new road that goes after. And then, of course, what happens is if our pipes under the Route 2 fail, then the kind of playing field will be on the hook for replacing the pipes under the Route 2, which will be costly. And the pipes under Route 2 are very old. So that's kind of,
Okay.
I will, so I did have a couple of other questions though, so I did want to ask, so when you have this, committee or, planning day on the February 8th, will that be town voters only?
We haven't made that specific on the RSVP, but it probably should be. Yeah,
So that was
Good question.
yeah.
one of my questions, because I think if it's gonna be a town project, it should be town people.
Makes sense.
And then, in reference to the survey that you sent out, how was that survey done? Because I don't think that was a townwide survey.
It was posted, it was an electronic survey. Eli and myself and Dan Fingus put it together with support from others. And we did just circulate electronically. It was posted several times on both Front Porch Forum and Facebook. And then there were some other flyers that were put up with links and stuff like that. I mean, as with anything, you could have always gotten it further and wider, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would suggest anytime that you're doing a townwide survey, that it goes out to all taxpayers. At least, I mean, you're not gonna get the renters, but
Yeah.
at least you can.
For the mailing for this, we actually had some money to send out a mailing, but to send a mailing to all the taxpayers cost like $750, $800. And at the time, we didn't, to get it printed and then mailed, with the price of postage, that's what it cost. And so we didn't have any money to do anything at that time, which I think is why we didn't.
$2.5 million project.
You need your,
How do you think taxpayers should be aware of what's going
We didn't know if we had a project in October, just to be fair. Yeah,
What was sent in the mailboxes then? We got something.
that's for these meetings.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It didn't that include a link to sign up to be a part of the, like, express interest in? That you wanted to be a part of the ownership?
They're talking about the survey.
This was a survey that was done in like September, October.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Why are the committee meetings not public? Your own survey results and recommendations were to make this an inclusive process. Right now, it feels like too many decisions and plans are being made in secret. Several people have asked for that, including members of the committee. You could allow view only if you don't want to take time to be interactive.
Yeah, I think this person has asked several questions.
Apparently.
Yes.
I mean, does anybody want to speak? I can speak to that. Do others want to speak to that?
Yours do?
I think we should answer this. I've heard it from multiple people in town. And I feel like if we're letting people in person ask multiple questions, it's unfair.
Nobody has asked more than one question, not one. Well, all right, in one sitting. Okay.
If the project moves forward, we'll have to form an official town committee to really, move the project forward. And at that point in time, I think as sort of just said, there's been a lot of exploration, and I would say for my own part, a lot of false trails and rabbit holes that led nowhere and things that were never going to work that were explored. And, the point of these public meetings is really to say, okay, we had a lot of half-baked ideas. We think we're getting to an idea that's baked. And it's time to really start sharing this idea and how do we move it forward. And so that, in many ways, the group getting together has been like many other citizens groups that have formed around town for other things. And so I think if we really have a project that does move forward, it's very important that we have a committee that's appointed by the select board, and we have a very open and transparent process where all things are on the table. And I think that'd be great.
Yeah, and we did start meeting in August, so it's like it is kind of it's really fast. It's been kind of wild. Incredible. Go ahead, Ren.
Great. I want to speak to the timeline a little bit. I'm really excited about this project. I'm very impressed by all of the questions you guys have answered, and I totally hear the concern about it. It feels really fast. And it also makes sense to me that there's a lot of questions that haven't been answered because it's moving so quickly. And I think it's just important to remember that this is a really particular moment for Plainfield and for the state. Like, there's a lot of attention on us right now. And I feel like, especially in your presentation, we heard a lot of stories of the state being willing to move much more quickly. There being a lot of goodwill, a lot of money available, a lot of just energy for this to happen quickly. And that might mean that we go into town meeting day with some big questions unanswered. And I think if it doesn't happen this year, a lot of that energy and attention and money and goodwill might not exist next year. And so we're looking then at more like down the road, a developer doing this. And I personally feel really excited about the town having decision-making ability to make this a vibrant community that's walkable, movable for a long time. So thank you.
I think we should.
Let me.
How are we doing here?
There's a few more questions here, so maybe we set a time that we want to wrap up by.
Well,
Is there another one of these?
Yeah,
There's another on
Sunday.
Sunday.
So maybe we could answer some of these questions in the subsequent meeting on Sunday.
Thanks.
Are you asking
everybody
me?
For showing up.
Are we having that?